Hi, this video gives you an idea of what different modifications to your tube amplifier will sound like. I will replace tubes, output transformer and speakers, and I will each time let you listen to the effect of the modifications I do. The amplifier I'm using is an Epiphone Valve Special. I already tried to modify it a bit to get less mid response and more bass and more treble, but I wasn't really successful in doing these modifications. So now we are starting to replace some components. The first sound samples you'll listen to is an open G chord, and each time you'll hear my comments on the difference in the sound that the modification has caused. After this session, you will listen to all of the sounds again without a narrative so that you can better compare the different sounds. So the difference between the second sound and the first sound is that I replaced the preamp valve. It is the first valve that I replaced, and people tell me that this input valve has the most effect on the sound. So I was a bit disappointed to hear that there was not much difference, and the difference that there was, that was the tone was becoming even a bit more dark. And I was expecting a brighter tone, so that's not really a good modification for me, but overall the effect was smaller than what I anticipated. You just heard a big difference between the third sound and the second sound. And this wasn't expected at all, because what I did was I replaced the second tube in the preamp, and this one is just driving the tone stack and shouldn't have much effect on sound. Yet there was a very big impact on sound, and actually the tube amp sounded much brighter, which is much better. So my only conclusion here is that maybe the second tube, which was in there before, was broken, and this new tube just fixed the broken tube. The change from the third sound to the fourth sound isn't very pronounced. There are maybe a bit more highs or a bit more attack, I don't know how to state it. And it also wasn't expected to be a very big difference, because the power valve tends to have less effect on the output sound than the preamp valves. And also I replaced a similar valve, a Softec EL84, by a GGA AL84, so there wasn't much difference in sound expected. What you just heard was the biggest improvement in quality of the sound of the tube amplifier that I have achieved. I replaced a very tiny small output transformer, which was stock in the Epiphone Valve Special, with a much beefier output transformer, 125 DSE, and this really gave a lot more low end and also a bit more high end. The last modification I did was replacing the speaker. Actually, I think this was the most expensive modification, and actually a bit unnecessary as well, because I don't feel that the new speaker is sounding much better than the old one. It sounds a bit more crispier, a bit more, gives a bit more the feeling of a more direct attack, a bit less muddy maybe, but that also could be because it's still new. So I regret buying this speaker a bit. I was expecting much more highs, but the opposite is true. It's a bit more in the medium high frequency that I get more frequency response, but definitely not more high. So I think the original speaker which was in there was of a good quality to start with, and I shouldn't have replaced this speaker. To give you a better feeling of the differences in sound, I will now play the 6 sounds again without the narrative, and you will hear the difference, and on the screen you will see the frequency response of the different chords that you hear. To get more material to compare the different tones of the amp, I also did a second test, and that is to walk up and down a scale. And I repeated this test, of course, for each of the 6 settings. So you will now listen to the same modifications again, but with a different sound. Instead of an open G chord, I will be walking up and down the scale. As a last sound sample, I struck some barré chords, and you can hear the different modifications I did through these barré chords. My conclusion of this video was already a bit clear. The only thing that I really would have done in retrospect was to replace the output transformer. I regret buying the speaker, and I also regret replacing the 2 tubes that actually weren't broken. Actually, I will replace the first tube again with the original one, because that gave me even a little bit more high. And maybe I can also replace the power tube with the original one, so that I can keep this new power tube as a spare. And I will only keep the second tube in the preamp, which reportedly was broken. So that is something I really needed to replace. So conclusion: replace your output transformer if you're not happy with the sound of your tube amplifier. All the rest can come later.